Good afternoon, my dear students. In today's session, we are going to discuss about a topic called Kepler's laws of planetary motion. So the name of the topic, Kepler's laws of planetary motion. You might have learned in your 9th standard about laws of motion, which are Newton's laws of motion. There were 3 Newton's laws of motion: first law, second law, and third law. In the same way, while analyzing the planetary motion also, there will be 3 laws are given. So those are called Kepler's laws of planetary motion. The scientist behind these laws of planetary motion is Kepler. We know in the starting concept of gravitation chapter we had discussed about the flow of the chapter or the history of the gravitation. There we had discussed about this Kepler. From this Kepler's laws of planetary motion only Newton's law of gravitation called universal law of gravitation is deduced. So, from this Kepler's laws of planetary motion only, Newton's law of gravitation, which is F is equal to capital G m1 m2 by r square. And this is the equation which is derived by using this Kepler's laws of planetary motion. And this equation is designed by whom? F is equal to G m1 m2 by r square is designed by you. So, designed by Newton. The help of Kepler's laws of planetary motion. Okay, and this is after Kepler, and before Kepler also we had discussed there was a scientist called Tycho Brahe, who is the teacher of this Kepler, who dedicated his whole life in noting down about the motion of the planets, right? So he is the Kepler, student of that type, right? Now, first law of planetary motion we will start. First law of planetary motion, and this is the first law, is also called as law of orbits. What is the first law? Law of orbits. And this is the first law, states that all the planets will be revolving around the sun in an elliptical orbits. In an elliptical orbit. And the sun lies at one of the foci. Let's read the statement once again. All the planets will be revolving around the sun in an elliptical orbit. And listen here, elliptical orbit. So that's the reason the first law of Kepler is called as law of orbits. And the sun lies at one of the foci. So foci is the plural form of focus, right? So what is the foci here? So foci is the plural form of focus, right? So I hope it's very clear to you. Here we are going to concentrate on these 2 terms here, elliptical orbit and the foci. First, what is this elliptical orbit? You should know some basics related to the ellipse. So ellipse is of this shape. So this you all know. So this is the into two halves. So those are called a horizontal line is drawn. This is the line. You know what is this line? So this is the line is called major axis. When this ellipse is divided into two pieces horizontally, it's called major axis. This is the line. So you can say from here to here. So this is A and the middle point, let's say it's O and this is B. So this AOB is called major axis. AOB. Right? And the same ellipse, I am going to cut it vertically. Here, if I cut this ellipse into two vertical halves in this way, so here also there is B, C, O, B, right? And this is the line. It's called minor axis. What is it called? Minor axis. You know, major axis and the minor axis. And the minor axis is what? C, O, D. C, O, D. Now, there is a concept called semi-major axis and semi-minor axis. What is the semi-major axis here? If this is the major axis, half of it is called semi-major axis. Half of it is called semi-major axis. Half of this is called semi-minor axis. Half of this is also called semi-minor axis. So that's the part I'm going to write here. Listen to me carefully. So AO is equal to OB is equal to semi major axis. Okay. And here CO is equal to OD, which is equal to semi minor axis. What is that? CO, which is equal to OB, which is equal to semi minor axis. Semi-major axis is done and semi-minor axis is done. So these are the topics which are maybe a new topics for you, but still this will again repeat in your +1 gravitation chapter. This may be new to you, but don't worry. Try to adjust. Try to learn something new. So here, the semi-major axis, you know, semi-minor axis. See, I can stop by telling just the definition, but that's not solve the purpose of learning. So that is the reason this much explanation I am just giving only the concept of ellipse. Now, here comes the concept called focus. What is the focus here? And you can see here that there is a midpoint between the semi-major axis and there is a midpoint between the semi-major axis. So what I can write here, you can see carefully here. So this is the midpoint between this semi-major axis, so that is F1. There is another midpoint is available between this semi-major axis also, right? So that is called another focus. You can see here. For ellipse, how many focus is available? How many focus are available? 2. F1, F1, F2, right? So the plural of it is called foci. Okay, so I am writing here F1 and F2. It's called a foci. That's the plural of focus. Now, come to the concept of definition. What is that? All the planets will be revolving around the sun in an elliptical orbit, and the sun lies at one of the foci. Any of the foci sun will lie. So imagine most of the students so far, including you, so far you may have thought that sun will be at the middle of the ellipse and all the planets will be revolving. This is planet 1, revolving in this elliptical orbit. So this is what the midpoint of the sun. So most of the students will feel this way, but that's wrong. Where the sun lies? If you consider this is an ellipse, so the sun will lie at one foci, then the planet will be revolving around it. So this is the sun's position. So sun will lie at one foci, and the planet will be revolving around it in an elliptical orbit. So that is a correct representation. This is not the correct representation. Okay. Clear? Did you understand the topic? So this is called first law of Kepler, because it is talking about the orbits, elliptical orbit. That's called law of orbits. What is this called? Law of orbits. Now Kepler's second law we are going to discuss. To understand the Kepler's second law, this understanding is very important. Where the sun lies in the planetary motion, it will not lie exactly at the center of the earth. It lies at any of the focus, maybe here or maybe here. Okay, and the planet will be revolving in elliptical orbit. And listen to me, one important statement I am just going to give you. One important point I am just going to give you here. Here, when we observe the planetary motion carefully, the sun lies at the focus of the planet will be revolving around it in elliptical orbit. But we can also assume, because solving the numericals by considering this elliptical path is too difficult. So that's the reason. While solving some numericals, we will be assuming and imagining that sun is at the center and the planets are revolving in the circular orbits. Again I am telling you, so this is the sun and the planets are revolving in the circular orbit. So this is what we call assumption. Understand? So we will be assuming in this way while solving the numericals. That will be easy, because this planetary motion will be taking place at a far distance. Understand? So you can assume in this way also that sun will be at the center, and this is what the circular orbit of planets will take. Okay? Is it clear? Now let's start Kepler's second law of planetary motion. Let's start Kepler's second law of planetary motion. So this second law of planetary motion is also called as law of areas. What is this? Law of areas. First one was law of orbits. Okay. Now, what is the second law states? Let us discuss first. It states that the line joining the sun and the planet sweeps out equal areas in equal intervals of time. Equal areas in equal intervals of time. So simple. It may be a new for you, but it can be learned. The line joining the sun and the planet sweeps out equal areas in equal intervals of time. You can see there is a word called equal areas. So that's what law of areas. The first thing, the line joining the sun and the planet. You know how the sun and planet will be revolving. Sorry, how the planets are revolving around the sun. You know. So let us draw the diagram first. Let's draw that elliptical diagram first. Then we'll see the rest of the things. So this is what minor axis of the minor axis, major axis and the semi-major axis. Sun is located here. Here is the sun's position, right? So imagine there is a planet. So this is a planet P. P stands for planet. This is the planet. It's starting from point A. The line joining the sun and the planet. Where is the line joining the sun and the planet? You just draw a line which is joining the sun and the planet. So let me draw a line joining the sun and the planet. From A to B, it has reached in this way. This is the planet, the same planet. so reach to the point called B here. So now at B also you can draw a line joining the sun and the planet. From A to B, how it has moved you can check carefully. The line joining the sun and the planet sweeps out equal areas in equal intervals of time. Sweeps out. See here, this is the line sweeping out some area. Yes or no? Definitely some area is covered here. So this is what the area covered by this line joining the sun and the planet. Okay. So imagine. So this is the area covered is A1. In a time, there must be some time, right? There must be some time taken by this planet to move from here to here. So that is what the time taken, let me write as T1. For your better understanding, small T1 is the time taken from here to here. It's a first case. Second case, after some time, the planet will be reaching here, right? So imagine that's a point C and the planet B. This is the line joining between sun and the planet now. After some time, at what time now? T1 is equal to T2. In a time T2, look at here, the planet has reached till this point. So this is the planet to the point D. Here also some area is covered by this line joining the sun and the planet. So imagine that area is A2 and it is taken place at a time T2. Look at the most interesting part of the topic called Kepler's second law of planetary motion, which is also called as law of areas. What is it? The line joining the sun and the planet sweeps out equal areas in equal intervals of time. What does that mean? Imagine when these time intervals are equal, definitely the areas are also equal. That's what they say. If your T1 is equal to T2, obviously A1 will be equal to A2. From here to here, if the time taken is 20 hours, the area covered is A1. In the same 20 hours, wherever the location of the planet will take, the area covered will remain same. I hope you got it. I hope it's very clear for you. What is the statement I have given just now is, imagine from here to B, the planet is covered some area A1 in a time 20 hours. In the same 20 hours, the planet will sweep out an area called A2. As the time intervals are same, the areas also will remain same. When A1 is equal to A2, T1 is equal to T2. So what I can write, the most important part I am writing here, A1 by T1, which is equal to A2 by T2. Understand? Clear? When A1 by T1 is equal to A2 by T2, and you know this law, we can write aerial velocity of a planet. Aerial velocity of a planet is constant. Aerial velocity of a planet is what? Constant. This is a very important step. Aerial velocity of a planet is constant, which is revolving around the sun in an elliptical orbit, such that the sun's position will be at one of the foci. Aerial velocity of a planet is constant. This is a neat exam question. So not only from the 9th standard and 10th standard basics. Aerial velocity of a planet will be constant. What is aerial velocity? You know, displacement by time is velocity. What is aerial? Aerial displacement by time. A stands for aerial displacement by time. Aerial displacement by time. It's constant because this is equal to this. Right? Aerial velocity of a planet is constant. So that's a statement related to law of orbits, means second law of planetary motion. And this same second law, one more important point you should understand is, imagine at the point A and the point D. Or for your better understanding, I will draw another diagram so that it will be very easy for you. This is an elliptical orbit. Okay, this is an elliptical orbit. Here is the sun is located. Here is the sun's position is here. I am just taking three positions of the planet. This is the planet position A, and this is the planet position B, and this is the planet position C. Right? You know the interesting thing is, speed of the planet around the sun depends on distance between the planet and the sun. This is a experimental analysis. So what I am going to tell you here is, here speed of a planet around the sun depends on the distance between sun and planet. Right? If the sun and planet is far off, I am writing the case 1 here. If the planet is far away from the sun, it moves slowly. Second one, if the planet is close to the sun, it moves faster. Got the point? Clear? If the planet is far away from the sun, it moves slowly. In this case, speed is slow. Speed of the planet is slow when it is at position A. When the planet is very close to the sun, it moves faster. So what you can say here? This is far away. This is little bit far away, and it is very close. So this is what the experimental analysis. What I can write: speed of the planet at the position C is greater than speed of the planet at position B is greater than speed of the planet at position A. So what you can say? Speed of the planet is slow at A, fast at C, because sun is close to the planet, it moves faster. Sun is far away from the planet, here it moves slowly. So this is what the Kepler's second law of planetary motion. So two important things you should understand in second law of planetary motion. Number one is aerial velocity of a planet is constant. Any planet around the sun takes its aerial velocity remains constant. And the second point is about this one. When planet and the sun are closer, then planet moves faster. When sun and the planet are far away, and the planet moves slowly, but their aerial velocity remains constant, and they sweep out equal areas in equal intervals of time. Let's start the third law, Kepler's third law of planetary motion. Here comes Kepler's third law of planetary motion. Like first law and second law, there is another name for Kepler's third law of planetary motion. You know what is Kepler's third law of planetary motion? It's also called as law of periods. Law of periods. Right? Let's understand the statement and explanation. So then some applications or numerics. Let's see. Including the diagram. Okay? It states that the square of the time period of a planet in an elliptical orbit is directly proportional to the cube of semi-major axis. So simple statement. The square of the time period by a planet in an elliptical orbit is directly proportional to the cube of the semi-major axis. Let's draw the diagram here. So your favorite nth diagram is here. You can see the semi-minor or minor axis, and here the major axis here. So this is what the position of the sun, okay, at one of the foci. And imagine I have a planet here, and this is the planet will be revolving in this elliptical orbit. You all know that the time taken by the planet to complete one revolution is called time period. So I am writing here. The time taken by a planet to complete one revolution in an elliptical orbit is called time period of the planet. It's called what? Time period of the planet, which is denoted with the symbol T. So the time period definition you might have already learned, but still I have given the time taken by the planet to complete one revolution around an elliptical orbit is called time period. Here, this is the planet will be completing one elliptical orbit. Okay, so that is called T square. That is what given here. Square of the time period of a planet in an elliptical orbit is directly proportional to cube of the semi-major axis. So this is your semi-major axis, right? So let us write the name for the semi-major axis is small r or capital R, anything. So I can write here cube of the semi-major axis. You can see T square is directly proportional to R cube. So this is the very important. Yes. Alright, check here. So T square is directly proportional to R cube. See, in some of the books it will be written as capital R. So you should not get confused. Where the students generally get confused in Kepler's third law of planetary motion, I am just going to tell you now. Look at it. Here there is a circular shape I have taken. I have told you already. You can also assume that the elliptical shape as the circular shape, and this will be the minor axis and this will be the major axis. In case of circle, the minor axis and major axis are diameter of the circle. Yes or no? So definitely it is yes. This is the minor axis and this is the major axis. Here it's major axis and here it is minor axis. Here the radius is r, so that's called r. And the planet, imagine, it started from here. And when we assume that the orbit is in circular path, the sun will be imagining that lies at the center of the circular path. Here. Right? Now, the time taken by this planet to finish one circular orbit is called time period, like how we had discussed in the last session, how we had discussed the definition over there about the time period. Now, here T square is directly proportional to R cube. In both the cases, it's the same. Whether you take it as an elliptical orbit or a circular orbit, so your square of the time period will be directly proportional to cube of the semi-major axis. But here, the semi-major axis is the radius of the circle. Yes or no? See here, this R is equal to radius of the circle. But here, the R is not the radius of the ellipse. Understand? Clear? So this is the concept about Kepler's third law of planetary motion called law of periods. Okay. Sometimes your T square is directly proportional to R cube. Can be written as T1 by T2 whole square, which is equal to some constant into R1 by R2 whole cube. Okay. So if they give the values related to R1 and R2. So for example, in most of the cases we will be taking, if constant is 1, then experimental constant that is. So T1 by T2 whole square is equal to R1 by R2 whole cube. Okay. So this is how numericals also can be solved. And how the numericals will be asked, I just write here, you can check. Given that R1 by R2 is given as 1 by, I can say it is 1 by 2, for example. And the question is find T1 by T2. How will you find T1 by T2 here? T1 by T2 whole square is equal to R1 by R2 whole cube. What is R1 by R2? 1 by 2 whole cube. 1 by 2 whole cube is 1 by 8. And T1 by T2 whole square is 1 by 8. If you apply square root in both the sides, you get T1 by T2 is equal to 1 by root 8. The ratio of time periods of these planets will be 1 by root 8. Like that. Like this, questions also can be asked based on Kepler's third law of planetary motion. Now the last topic of the session is derivation or deducing the universal law of gravitation from Kepler's laws of planetary motion. So for that, we are assuming that there is a circular path in which the sun lies at the middle and a planet P is revolving in the circle, in the circular orbit. You know, it is called minor axis and this is major axis. Anyhow, in a circular path, minor axis is equal to major axis, and this is the circular path is having the radius r, which is also equal to semi-major axis. And time taken by this planet in completing one circular path is time period. So those are the things I am writing here. So T is equal to time period of a planet. V is equal to speed of a planet. R is equal to semi-major axis or radius of the circle. Radius of this circular distance divided by time. From here we can write speed is v, which is equal to distance. In completing one circular path, the distance covered is 2 pi r, which is called circumference. So divided by time is time period. Because here distance covered is complete circle, right? To complete one circle, time taken is called time period. So from this, what you can write, time period is equal to 2 pi r by v. Let's write equation 1. Now what is our aim? Our aim is, imagine the mass of the sun is m and mass of the planet is small m. Okay, here I am writing that also. Capital M is mass of the sun. Small m is mass of the planet. Right? So what is our aim? So I am writing here, our aim is to find F is equal to G capital M small m by r square. What is G? Universal gravitational constant. What is M capital M? Mass of the sun. Small m, mass of the planet. The distance between them r. So this is our aim. Fine? Alright. Let us take the concept called Kepler's third law of motion. According to third law, which is called law of periods. According to law of periods, what happens? P square is directly proportional to r cube. So this we can write it as P square is equal to some constant into r cube. Keep it that constant as it is. Now here, if I substitute the first equation from equation number 1, so what I can write T square? Can I write like this? 2 pi r by v whole square. 2 pi r by v whole square, which is equal to k into r cube. So this can be written as 4 pi square r square divided by v square, which is equal to k into r cube. Right? So this is r square cancel. So this kr comes to the denominator. So this v square is equal to 4 pi square by kr. Okay. So this is equation number 2. Next, what we need to do is, this is the particle moving in a circular path. Any body to move in a circular path, centripetal force is necessary. What is that force? Centripetal force. I am writing here, centripetal force is responsible for a planet to move in circular path. So what is the centripetal force? Centripetal force formula is mv square by r. What is that here? Centripetal force. Centripetal force will be there between sun and the planet. Okay. Now, this is from equation 2. You can substitute v square here. From equation number 2, what you can write? F is equal to m by r into m by r into v square. What is v square? V square you can write here. 4 pi square divided by kr. Okay. Clear? Now, what are the constants here you see? F is equal to 4 pi square into m divided by k into small r is r square. So from this what you can write? F is inversely proportional to R square. Yes or no? Clear? What is this F? Force of attraction between these two masses, which is inversely proportional to R square. So that is what our aim. F is inversely proportional to R square. Is it alright? So what about directly proportional to the mass? You can see here, directly proportional to mass in action equation. Here also we have F is directly proportional to mass. Clear? F is directly proportional to mass. Here F is inversely proportional to R square. That's it. That's our aim here. But you may get the confusion that F is directly proportional to the product of these two masses and inversely proportional to R square. Inversely proportional to R square is satisfied and directly proportional to the product of mass. We are going to do that. Right? Look at it. And what we have discussed. And before the Newton also, how much force this attracts on this, the same amount of force will be attracted by this. With what force it pulls this body, with the same force, this body also will pull it. So, when we take the centripetal force which is equal to, which is directly proportional to this mass, the same centripetal force can also be directly proportional to this mass. So, what you can write? So, F can be directly proportional to product of masses and F can be directly inversely proportional to R square. So, if you combine these two, F is equal to some constant or F is directly proportional to capital N small n by R square. Finally, F is equal to some constant. That constant is universal gravitational constant capital N small n by R square. So we have proved. From where we have proved? We have proved F is equal to Gmm by R square is from Kepler's third law of planetary motion. We have proved. So this is how Newton also has proved universal law of gravitation. Not proved, he has discovered the universal law of gravitation by using Kepler's laws of planetary motion in this way. But one important thing I just wanted to mention here, listen to me carefully. Even in your +1 gravitation chapter, Kepler's first law, second law, third law are important, not at all this relation. This is the relation. Just I wanted to show you that how Newton has taken Kepler's laws of planetary motion and deduced the universal law of gravitation. That's it. This is the topic, is not at all important for your board as well as NEET JEE CET. I hope it is very clear to you and this is just for your reference. No assignment question, no exam question will be asked from this topic, not only in our discussion, in your board as well as in your entrance exams. Just for your reference. But Kepler's first law, second law, third law, what are those statements? If any expression is there or not, and what are the other names of them, all are important for board exams as well as entrance point of view. Right? See you in the next class.